Today on the LIVEcast, kind to be cruel, how we've weaponized wokeness.
Terrific. Kind to be cruel. Do you see what we did there?
Yeah, I see.
Not cruel to be kind. Kind to be cruel. In what ways, Paul? By the way, I haven't introduced myself. I'm Glen Scrivener.
Hello, Glenn. I'm Paul. I'm Paul Feesey.
Nice to meet you, Paul.
I say I was slightly confused when I started that bit a moment ago.
No, you were a real pro.
Well, no, I wasn't. So I said kind to be cruel, and because we've got these new headphones on, and there's a delay, it sounded like you were talking, and I kind of went,
You sounded like me.
No, it just, there were two voices in my head all of a sudden. I was like, I thought I was doing it.
And they're playing the repeating game.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. My daughter loves that one. Yeah. Oh, man. So kind to be cruel is the big theme for today. Are there ways in which we ostensibly are telling people that we're being kind, but actually, if you don't live up to my standards of kindness, to hell with you, buddy. And all of a sudden, what starts out as me being motivated by kindness actually ends up with me and my Twitchfork mob tearing you to pieces in front of tens of thousands of Twitter followers.
Yeah, it seems to be what a lot of the virtue signaling stuff is built on, isn't it?
Right.
Like, I think genuinely there's a lot of people who point stuff out on social media who it often seems quite insincere to me.
Yes.
Like, I think, do you really care, or is this just an opportunity for you to try and look good in front of other people by basically being a jerk to other people?
Right, in the name of kindness.
Yeah, because I'm so tolerant and lovely and,
yes,
all those things.
Totalitolerance, as some people call it. One of many, many examples of this came to light just this morning for me. It was a tweet that was sent out by Paddy McGuinness yesterday. For those who don't know who Paddy McGuinness is, Paul, bring us up to speed.
Paddy McGuinness is a TV presenter. He presents Take Me Out. Mm-hmm. Is that it? No likey, no lighty.
It's lost on me.
But just phrases saying.
Yes. It's the new Blind Date, right?
I
on
think
ITV.
So. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think did you say
Top
he did
Gear.
Top Gear as well?
Yeah.
The new Top Gear that no one watches.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. Allegedly, he's on Top Gear. Yes.
Yeah. So he's kind of a low-level celebrity.
He's got 400,000 Twitter followers.
Well, admittedly, better than me, so I give him that.
Yes.
Yeah. So he's not kind of in the A-list, though, is he?
No, he's not Donald Trump, but
No,
400,000 that's some platform.
So he'd be known.
So he sent out a tweet, in fact, a whole string of tweets just yesterday. And can we have those up on screen? I'll just read out this tweet storm that Paddy McGuinness sent out after a day out with the kids. It was clear that he was in charge of the kids, and he wanted to park up so that the kids could go to a soft play center or something like that. And so tweet number 1 of the tweet storm was, just had a deep breathe and walk away moment, dropped off my little ones at a play center, parked in a disability space while they got out, had all our relevant disability badges on display only for some bellend to come over and tell us that we don't look disabled? ? Hashtag ignorance. Right. Tweet number 2. I took a deep breathe and sent my children in. Luckily, they didn't understand what was going on? ? Once they'd happily gone in, I approached this ignorant tool. All I wanted to do was bounce him off every car, but there would only be one loser in that, me. Hashtag ignorance. Number 3, instead, I tried to explain to him that not all disabilities are the same? ? The ignorance and sheer pomposity of telling someone they don't look disabled really makes my blood boil. How does someone have to look? How does someone have to look to have a disability? Ignorance. This sad individual was also parked in a disability bay? ? He was able-bodied, but it would never cross my mind to ask him what his disability was, as he could clearly walk? ? So it's important to know this other guy is also disabled in some way. This other guy has a dog in the fight, so to speak, but we never get his side of things.
Sure.
We just get Paddy's side of things. Unless you get a blue badge for being an ignorant prick? ? He was clearly qualified. Hashtag ignorance. But it doesn't end there. Paddy McGuinness continues And on the next slide, tweet number 5, a few years back, it would have been a different outcome for him and me. He'd be on his ass and putting a call into the tabloids. I would have been vilified and labelled a thug, the very idea. My wife and children would have been upset, and I'd more than likely be out of a job. # ignorance. Number 6, I'm so glad I took that deep breathe and handled the situation calmly. I feel better for it, and hopefully that ignorant person might think twice next time, or indeed learn that all disabilities are different. # ignorance. Final tweet, if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, stay calm, take a deep breathe, and educate the ignorant. Preferably on Twitter before 400,000 baying Twitchfork mob. People who will then take this guy to the woodshed and show him the ignorant tool that he really is. He says, you'll feel better and you'll still have a job to pay your mortgage and look after your family. # ignorance, # autism awareness, # hypermobility.
Because we know if you do something like that on Twitter, right, it never comes back to bite you anyway, does it?
No.
It's never... Yes. Nothing anyone has ever put on Twitter is...
Yes. This was the gracious response.
Yep.
Right. Like, bouncing him off every car in the parking lot would have been the non-gracious response.
Sure.
But destroying him in front of millions, because this has now become major news.
Yeah, well,
BBC
yes,
Breakfast.
It's gone wider than 400,000 people, hasn't it? That's
right.
for sure.
Yeah.
So...
And overwhelmingly, people are like, hey, well done, Paddy, and what a tosser, and what an ignorant, and people are just...
I was just thinking, as you were reading out those tweets, I was like, oh, he's definitely going to censor some of this.
Yeah.
Given the...
I don't know, I'm Australian. This is
you got for use of the word sod once. And
don't say it again.
You've just thrown them all in now.
I didn't say that. You said that. But and overwhelmingly people are on Paddy's side, and you can understand. Like, it's a really jerk move to go up and say, you're parked in a disabled bay, are you really disabled?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the whole kind of not all disabilities are visible thing, absolutely the case. So yeah, he's right in that sense. But I think the disconnect for us was it's this kind of, a few years ago I would have just gone and thrown the guy over the car bonnet and whatnot, but took a deep breathe and terrible. You're terrible. You made me do that. I took a deep breath and I didn't do anything about it. I walked away.
Yes.
And then I made sure to tell everyone on social media about it. Yeah. That feels like the disconnect.
Right. Yeah.
A little bit there.
Yeah, totally. Because this other guy, that's not cool to do what he did. Although we don't know his side of things, and we don't know what kind of disability he had, and whether he felt like it was taking up a space that he needed because of his mobility issues. I don't know. Overwhelmingly, let's just assume it was a jerk move by this other guy. But there's a huge imbalance of power going on when Paddy McGuinness leverages his Twitter following in order to take this guy out. And it's just, it's interesting in Matthew 5, in this very same chapter, Jesus says, turn the other cheek. If someone strikes you on one cheek, turn to the other cheek. And clearly that's not just about physical assaults, because Jesus also says in that chapter, even if you are angry with somebody, you've already committed murder in your heart.
Sure.
So turning the other cheek is not just be non-violent. It's also be non-violent in the words that you use and in the heart attitude that you have. But it just seems like this is a real example of being violent in a tweet rather than being violent in person. And that's better. It's definitely better than hospitalizing somebody. But it doesn't lead to a very constructive discourse, I don't think.
No.
Online.
And I think it just highlights as well that there does seem to be this feeling that it's what you do that matters. And, as long as you didn't act on it, it was fine. Whereas I think from a Christian perspective, you want to say, oh, there's a nature thing in there as well. Yeah. But then in a sense as well, you also want to look and say, well, yeah, but you did act on it. You went home and you did it on Facebook instead, and or Twitter in this case. And I think, that's, you can understand it because he's justified, in the sense of that, what that guy said, or at least the side we know of it. You're like, yeah, that's a stupid thing to do. Why do you do that? But why do you have to come and parade that in front
Yeah.
of others. I don't know. Like,
It's something that we're all tempted to do if you've ever had bad service by an airline, for instance, or if just the other day I was reading someone's Twitter feed, and the breakdown assistance company that they were with had not served them well, and so we all got to hear about what a terrible job that breakdown assistance, and I can understand that could help you break through, like when you can't get through to AA, let's say it's AA, I'm not sure who it was, I forget in the end, but if you can't get through to the people you want to get through to, sometimes on Twitter saying @AA and you're through,
Yeah.
But we do vent online in a way that does not make the platform very pleasant at times.
No. And I think we've probably, even if, you're looking at him and you're thinking, celebrity doing that, we do see it just in our Facebook feeds with people.
Right.
So, I just think, like, we've all seen the people we know, maybe like the married couple who do their domestics on Facebook, and you're just sitting there going, oh my goodness, like, wow, why have they posted this? Like,
yeah.
It just, or they put those slightly veiled things about, they don't name any names.
Yes.
But they're really, it's so obvious they're talking about their partner.
Subtweet your own partner. I mean, there are worse things. There are like co-presenters who actually have a go at you on Facebook for being a terrible human being.
Well, and I think, though, when we get to that discussion, Glenn, people are going to side with me on this one, so let's be honest.
Oh, without doubt, you're right. Without doubt, you're in the right. But this is the problem. The problem is not whether someone's in the right. The problem is what you do with your righteousness.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
you display it, and you use it to absolutely destroy the other person, which is what's going on. So we've had a great question from Mr. Toast. Could you explain the title? The title being "Cruel to be," not cruel to be kind, kind to be cruel. So you might, if English is not your first language, which Mr. Toaster said it's not, there is a saying, "cruel to be kind," and it refers to.
Sometimes you've got to say the hard things.
Right.
It's like when you watch X Factor, you think someone should have been cruel to be kind to these people beforehand. They should have said, you know what, you're not a great singer. Probably best you don't go on national television and embarrass yourself.
Right. Or like say, Paul, you've got a bogey coming down here. It might. He doesn't know what to do about that.
I know, it's like.
yeah, exactly. I'm being cruel in one sense, in order to be kind, to save him his blushes later. But I think these days we've got this idea of everybody's kind, and in the name of kindness, and we've got disabled children. Like how much more kind could you be, and how much more on the side of rightness could you be? He's just trying to let his family flourish. In the name of kindness, he can then be cruel. Right, and I think that's what's kind of happening with all sorts of social justice issues. If you're on the right side of a number of different divides to do with race and gender and sexuality, then you can be cruel to everybody who's on the wrong side of those things.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the name of being woke. And actually, Barack Obama,
because we've been talking about wokeness all day, and a few people have said, "What does that mean?"
What is wokeness? So go on.
Wokeness is, it's a phrase that's kind of come to the fore in the last couple of years, probably.
Yeah.
So those people who would consider themselves to be woke, they're the ones who are awake. They're enlightened. So they look around and they see the world for what it really is. And if you're
which
not
means
woke,
everybody else is
asleep.
Yes.
They need to wake up to the realities of things.
Interestingly, the other day I was at a lecture by Tom Holland, who we've mentioned for a couple of weeks now, who's this historian who's written about the history of Christianity, and his final chapter in his book Dominion is called Woke, and he says it's very interesting that it's a very Christian idea in one sense. It's a hyper-Christian idea because the 18th century, and you've got the awakenings, on either side of the Atlantic. You've got Wesley and Whitefield preaching the gospel and awakening people to faith. And so it's been a consistently religious idea that people generally are slumbering, but some people are awake and alive to these justice issues. But interestingly, Barack Obama, like the messiah for wokeness, right?
Yeah, sure.
The guy who 11 years ago today was elected as
Is it really?
president of the USA. November the 4th, 2008. He very recently gave a little speech in which he had a pop at cancel culture and the Wokier Than Thou. And it's really worth having a look at. Should we have a look at Barack Obama versus wokeness?
You know, this idea of purity and you're never compromised and you're always politically woke and all that stuff. You should get over that quickly. The world is messy. There are ambiguities. Yep. People who do really good stuff have flaws. People who you are fighting may love their kids. And, you know, share certain things with you. And I think that one danger I see among young people, particularly on college campuses, Malia and I talk about this. Yara goes to school with my daughter. But I do get a sense sometimes now among certain young people, and this is accelerated by social media, there is this sense sometimes of the way of me making change is to be as judgmental as possible about other people. And that's enough. Like if I tweet or hashtag about how you didn't do something right or used the wrong verb, or then I can sit back and feel pretty good about myself because, man, you see how woke I was? I called you out. Let me get on TV, watch my show, watch Grownish. You know, that's not activism. That's not bringing about change. You know, if all you're doing is casting stones, you know, you're probably not going to get that far. That's easy to do.
Very interesting. If all you're doing is casting stones, biblical reference, what's he referencing?
He who is without sin.
Right. So John chapter 8, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. Jesus says that to the Pharisees. So who is Barack Obama associating the woke brigade to in that instance?
Yeah.
Pharisees. And it is very puritanical in the worst sense of the word, isn't it? There is a purity test, and if you failed the purity test, if I trawl through your Facebook posts for the last 15 years and find even one, you know, off-color remark, like you are cancelled, you're gone, you're history.
Yep.
It's very interesting how those who would want to be seen as social justice warriors actually end up appearing very puritanical. It's a funny kind of
we are the holier than thou ones, you know. But I mean, I saw someone in the comments of that Obama thing saying, like, is he not just doing exactly the same thing here?
Right.
You know, and are we not doing the same thing to Paddy? You know. And I think you can keep pushing down those roads, obviously, to the point of absurdity. I mean, I think the point Obama's making is not to say, and hopefully we're making a similar point, is not to say you shouldn't call out wrong stuff, but there's a difference between saying, you know what, that's wrong, and going, and I'm always right. You know?
Yes.
You know, there's a difference there, isn't there?
Yeah.
And just painting someone who's in the wrong as being the worst human being ever.
Yes.
And that does seem to be very much how we're going at the moment. Like he was saying, it's if people do something, it's unforgivable, and you know, they're worse than Hitler. That's the kind of phrase, isn't it? So
right. But it's very good. You know, they probably love their kids as well. You know, and they're a mixed bag, and you're a mixed bag, and they're not all wrong, and you're not all right.
Yeah.
Words to live by. And I found them very similar to Matthew Parris's words 2 Saturdays ago in the Times. Matthew Parris, columnist for the Times, he was talking about tolerance and actually the intolerance that lurks behind all our language about tolerance. He was referring to a study that had been done by King's College London that said people today are more liberal than those of 30 years ago. But he was just playing with the language. Why do we call certain changes in views liberalizations and certain other changes in views, oh, that's a more regressive view. Like, why do we even do that? So he listed a few things that have changed over the last 30 years. So people are more, quote, liberal on whether you can live together before you're married. Is divorce okay? Is homosexual sex between consenting adults okay? And, on all those issues, more people today are okay with those things than were okay with those things. And we're happy to call that a more liberal attitude. But there are other issues, like what about pornography? Are you okay with that? Are you okay with drugs? Are you okay with abortion? Are you okay with euthanasia? Are you okay with embryo experimentation and TV violence? And more people, they are okay with that. That too is labeled by the study a more liberal view. And you're like, well, okay, is it?
Yeah.
And then he said, very interestingly, when people are asked, is capital punishment okay? Far more people today approve of capital punishment than did 30 years ago. So we actually want to kill more criminals and more of the unborn.
Was that what he said? I thought he said that when people are asked that question, the number has dropped.
Oh, is it?
But if you frame it differently,
yes.
So he was saying, if you ask people outright, capital punishment, yeah or nay, then most people will say no, it's a really bad thing, and that's changed, and that's dropped even more. But then he said, if you frame it in like, what do you think should happen to, the rapist or the
what is justice,
pedophile or the murderer?
Yes.
Then you see it all the time on Twitter, don't you? If you follow the thread, this person should be killed, or that should happen, and you go like, wow, actually, there's a lot of stuff in there which doesn't seem to fit with that idea. But
and so it's about what are we labeling liberal in those situations. Like you might think that sex outside of marriage or homosexuality or issues like this might have a negative impact on the family, in which case you would think this is a regressive move that doesn't help the flourishing of this positive thing called the family. It's all about how you frame it. And so Matthew Parris said, but there's one big loss of tolerance that I do regret, a loss that disfigures our era, tolerance of free speech. The narrowing of our range of tolerable opinions marks for me a huge regression from 30, even 40 years ago. In a way, we were not when I was 19 or 29. People are becoming frightened of saying the wrong thing, using the wrong language, or betraying the wrong thoughts about a pretty wide range of opinions, attitudes, or even scientific hypotheses. This is serious, potentially huge, and disabling to human progress. So the language that we use to talk about things, people are less and less okay with, which is a really huge issue when actually the whole thing is about the language that we use. Like whether something is a liberal or progressive or a regressive move is all about language. But the one thing we're getting less and less okay with is a free use of language.
Yep.
And in that, we are regressing massively, aren't we? Because we always want to say the right thing, and we do not tolerate those who do not have the right views. So Matthew Parris and Barack Obama.
Well, he said, the thing that struck me from that article is he said, looking at all this stuff, he said, an illusion arises that we're getting more tolerant all the time. But that's because we're only using the word when we approve. So we're counting in the things we've added to the list of what we tolerate without counting up the things we dropped. And then he said, were we to do so, you might conclude, as I do, that the well of human intolerance remains deep and constant. It only shifts its furies from one disfavoured group to another.
Right.
Which I thought was this idea of this well of human intolerance being deep and constant. You're like, that just sounds like a really biblical idea of, the sinfulness of the human heart. Because actually, and it is a cliche to say, isn't it? Those people who consider themselves to be the most inclusive and tolerant in our society are often the most exclusive and intolerant towards anyone that disagrees with them.
But it's okay for those people because they are beyond the pale.
Well, they're the woke ones.
I'm woke and they are.
Yeah.
They are just
Wokier than thou.
Yes, they are wokier than thou, and all of this is only going to get supercharged all the more because in this country, in December we're having an election, and in America, next year. This time next year, literally on the 3rd of November next year, there'll be an election in the States. And all of this is just going to be so much supercharged.
The thing is, though, like in the media, it's always like that, isn't it? That you have this, there's this group of people who think this and this group of people who think this, and they never meet anywhere. But then, like, I consider just the average person on the ground seems to be a bit more grounded normally, So if I think about people on my, if I read down my Facebook threads, I'll see people who are posting about this topic or this political party or that political party, and I think, like, man, I don't agree. Why are you supporting those guys, or why do you think that? And but then I know these people, and I'm like, they're actually decent people,
right?
They're not like, I don't just go, oh my goodness, like they're saying, "Whoa, Boris Johnson is great, therefore they're the worst person in the world."
Hashtag ignorance.
Yeah. So in the reality of everyday lives, we're probably much better at doing that.
Yes. Yeah, because you assume the best in somebody, because they're your friends. Like, so you've already got a pre-commitment.
You've got something there already.
There's a pre-commitment to treating this person as a human being who's well-rounded, who may just like their children or even love them. You're predisposed to actually treat them as a human being and not just as this dispenser of wrong think. But social media kind of depersonalizes things. Facebook is probably better at personalizing because they're your friends. They're not just your followers.
Sure.
And so, you are predisposed to actually treating them as a human being. But we should probably be predisposed to thinking that even about our ideological enemies. And I saw online just the other day John Wesley's voting advice. In 1774, he met with those in a Methodist society who had votes in a coming election, and he had these 3 bits of advice for voting. Number 1, to vote without fee or reward for the person they judged most worthy. Number 2, to speak no evil for the person they voted against. And number 3, to take care their spirits were not sharpened against those on the other side. So fascinating that is, whatever it is, 300 years ago, 250 years ago. And that was the great need.
And obviously that does still happen in the sense that people are divided by these things. I wonder whether, in the church in the UK, maybe are we less divided on it? So I just think, maybe if I just compare it to the States, the States, religion and voting wise, seems hugely divided, that there's this almost assumption that
if you go to a certain kind of church, you vote a certain party,
and so on. Whereas I've never really said that seems to be the case in the UK. I've not felt that. So no. I know, people, like I say, people on my Facebook who I'd say, well, they're clearly voting Tory and they're voting Labour and they want Lib Dem, and then you've got Green over there, or whatever. And there's no people that feel they can vote like that as a Christian with no. There's no conflict of interest there.
Yes. So hopefully you treat those who vote differently to you as brothers and sisters, because actually within the church people do vote for all sorts. So maybe there's more of a capacity in the US for demonizing the other side, because you might not feel, not only are they the wrong party, they're not even your brothers and sisters, they're outside the church, they're outside the fold. But what is the common humanity that might allow us to look across political divides and say, nonetheless, this person probably still loves their children. And they are not the enemy, and we do not fight against flesh and blood. Our warfare is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers in the heavenly realms, says the Apostle Paul. So let's neither raise up human beings as our saviors, nor do them down as demons. Things to think about as everybody heads into an election season. Well, over the course of the last few weeks, we've been meeting some of our interns. You might know that at Speak Life, we run an internship called the Speak Life Foundry. We've got 6 interns from around the world. We've got some from the US, some from England, and we've even got one from New Zealand.
Yeah.
And we're going to meet Max Patterson right now. Let's have a look at his video. This is Max Patterson. Yay!
Hello.
Hello. What is your shoe size, by the way, Max?
It's 11.
11.
Can you believe that?
Huge. He's a giant. And how tall are you? How tall are you, Max?
I actually don't know. I haven't measured
Really?
myself in years.
I'd say you're 6'2".
6'2".
I don't know.
Stand up?
6'1".
Have we gone?
Probably
He's
out of the
off.
frame.
Out of frame.
Oh, it must be massive.
He's a giant. He's a giant. So tell us where you're from, Max.
Sure. Well, I'm from New Zealand, which, contrary to popular belief, is not an island off Australia.
Australia is an island off New Zealand. We know
That's
it.
right. Yeah. From a little town called Geraldine, which is known for its jams, its ukulele festival.
I was going to say.
Jams.
Geraldine's Jams. Familiar.
Geraldine's Jams.
Yeah, there's a place called Barker's. So, no.
Shout out to Barker's.
Yeah, shout out to Barker's. But been sort of working with film and media for the last sort of 3.5 years. Mm-hmm. So been going sort of full-time freelance for about a year in Christchurch, which is our main sort of city in the South Island. And it's been really enjoyable. But sort of corporate videos, promotional videos, that kind of thing. Bit of photography as well. So sort of school balls, 21st weddings.
Okay.
Yeah,
So how did you hear about Speak Life then?
Well, through a comment on a Facebook page, so which usually doesn't sound so great, but I think it's a testament to your online outreach. So because every intern seems to have a different story, but it had been something on my mind as like, cool, filmmaking is literally my favorite thing to do in the world, but and I'm really enjoying doing this whole freelance thing, but like, how can this be used to greater the kingdom of God, and literally while that was sort of a thing that was that I was praying and being on my mind, this fell into my lap. Wow. And so I applied.
Well, we're very glad that you did. You've been such a breath of fresh air for us, and your expertise has been really useful on all sorts of projects. Tell us, what are some of the things that you've been getting up to since you've been here?
Sure. Well, it's been a bit of a mixed bag, but one thing that's been certainly a big part recently is The Gift, the short film The Gift. So been working through pre-production for that to look ahead to shoot on Wednesday, this Wednesday.
Yeah.
So very soon.
Christmas is coming.
Christmas is coming.
Bearing down on us. And I can't believe it's November already. But we need to get a wriggle on. So The Gift is... it's the story of an unwanted Christmas present that passes through a number of different hands and ends up in, well, we'll leave that for the viewer to see, the grand finale. But we actually have incredible news to drop here on the livecast. You've heard it here first. Our starring couple in The Gift. Matthew, do you want to put it up? It's Will and Claire from Meet the Nativity. Amazing. Will and Claire from Meet the Nativity. They are returning for another chapter in their story. Yeah. And we'll figure out what happens next with Will and Claire. So that was a real coup to get Emily and Anthony to join with us. But that'll be a joy to film with them on Wednesday. But what have been some of the challenges as you've been trying to think about being our director of photography for The Gift?
Sure. So, I mean, we've been sort of working through creatively what that looks like. What really excites me with The Gift is it's written to the tune of Carol of the Bells, but it's very much, it's got this real quick, sort of quirky pacing and lots of movement. I was saying earlier, so almost compare it to something like Baby Driver in the sense that we have like lots of things that are timed to the beat, and that's very much reflected visually as well. So, in fact, we're even going to be looking at sort of blocking that out, figuring out how we're going to be shooting that shortly after this today.
That's right. Yeah. We're going to grab some interns and use them as dummies and shift them around. So Carol of the Bells, it's the most demented carol known to man.
It'll get into your head. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Just stuck there.
I said before, I once enjoyed that song, but, after 300 listens, it does get a little bit old.
Great,
Yeah.
a little.
Yeah, it really does. So do watch out for, I was going to say Carol the Bells. No, do look out for The Gift. When is that dropping?
18th November.
18th of November.
And people can help out, can't they, Glenn?
Yeah, go on. How can they help out, Max?
Well, I was going to steer that to you. Paul, did you know that people can help out?
I didn't know. I didn't.
Wow.
Well, they can go to give.net/Christmas videos, and we're actually making 4 Christmas films this year. So we've got a 2D animation, a 3D animation, a cinematic journey, and this musical comedy called The Gift. Can you help us out? We're looking to raise £10,000, not only for the making of these films, but also for the pushing out of these Christmas
also
films.
for the Christmas party. That we want to have as well.
The mulled wine,
Yeah.
it doesn't buy itself.
Catering.
But money for promotion really goes a long way, especially on Facebook. So if you can give towards our crowdfunder, we would really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Max, thank you so much for joining us in the Foundry, but thank you so much for joining us on the livecast.
My pleasure.
And Paul, what are some ways that people can follow up if they want to support us here?
Yeah, well, simple thing you can do is just stay in touch with the stuff we're doing. So if you're on Facebook and YouTube or Instagram, give us a like or a follow, subscribe, and all those bits there. But also, if you want to help us out financially, obviously you can give to the Christmas video itself, or you can give more generally if you go to speaklife.org.uk/give, and then you can support all of our work through there.
And you know what?
What?
If you want to be in my shoes and do this kind of internship-y thing,
Yes.
there is actually a way that you can get involved.
No way.
Even as early as now, you can start the application process.
Tell me all about that.
I can't you believe it? I know. It's almost as if you're not the director of Speak Life.
Yeah,
No,
that's very much almost like that.
Sorry, I'm joking around. Speak Life have this great program called The Foundry, which involves a lot of training, but also a lot of very practical filming. So that's available for applications now. Am I
Right
in saying
now.
that?
Right
Yeah.
now. So go to speaklifefoundry.com. Fill out the application, and you could be
You could be like me.
You could be in this seat next year.
Yeah. Awesome. And we'd love you to join us. We've had applications from all over the world, and as we've said, 1 from New Zealand, 2 from America, 3 from the UK, 1 even from Ipswich.
It's
all
like
the way from
3, 2,
Ipswich.
1. Sorry.
It is like 3, 2, 1. Everything's about 3, 2, 1 here. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the livecast. Do give it a share on whatever social media platforms you're on. But between now and then, have a great week and keep on speaking life.
Take care. See ya.